10 things your school never taught you about Shakespeare. Number 10. Shakespeare was bisexual. Shakespeare's sexuality has been the subject of much academic discussion. The bard addressed 126 of his sonnets to a mysterious young man, often referred to as the Fair Youth, despite being married to Anne Hathaway, the mother of his 3 children. Included in this selection was the iconic sonnet 18, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" Commentators have noted the romantic language used in the poems and suggested that there was a sexual relationship between Shakespeare and the boy. Others have argued that these are demonstrations of platonic love and admiration. Number 9. Shakespeare took drugs. Recent scientific analysis of Shakespeare's possessions has discovered traces of cocaine and cannabis in his smoking pipes. At the time, the chemicals in question were commonly used in the production of rope, clothing, paper and medicines. However, the emergence of pipes laced with the narcotics points to people using the drugs for pleasure. Historians have speculated that Shakespeare may have used the substances to help him cope with the stress of being an in-demand playwright, or possibly even as a hallucinogenic source of inspiration. Number 8. Shakespeare's cousin tried to kill the Queen. Edward Arden, cousin to Shakespeare through his mother Mary, was involved in a plot to assassinate Queen Elizabeth I. Arden's son-in-law John Somerville had a plan to kill the monarch but was arrested before he could attempt it. Under interrogation, Somerville confessed that he had been put up to the crime by Arden, who had also emerged was a secret Catholic. As some scholars suspect, Shakespeare may also have been. Arden was found guilty of treason and gruesomely hanged, drawn and quartered in December 1583. His head was placed on a pike on London Bridge. Number 7. Shakespeare's tomb is cursed. Engraved on Shakespeare's tomb is a poem stating, "Cursed be he that moves my bones." Although at the time it was standard practice to dig up bodies from old graves to make room for the new ones, the bard's final resting place remained undisturbed for hundreds of years. That was, however, until archaeologists in 2016 performed a non-invasive exploration and made a startling discovery. Shakespeare's head appears to be missing. It is most probable that the playwright's skull was stolen from his shallow grave by trophy hunters in the 18th century. Number 6. Shakespeare may have had an illegitimate son. Many have speculated that playwright and poet laureate Sir William Devant was, in actual fact, a secret love child of William Shakespeare. Shakespeare was a frequent customer of an Oxford tavern, and contemporary accounts describe him as being close to the tavern owner's wife, Jane Devant. When Jane gave birth to a child in 1606, Shakespeare was named the boy's godfather. As William Devant grew up showing literary talent comparable to the bard himself, suspicions grew, which the young poet didn't deny. Number 5. Shakespeare invented swag. Shakespeare has been credited with adding almost 3,000 words and phrases to the English language, including "what the dickens," "wild goose chase," "puking," and "swagger." Whether Shakespeare actually invented the terms or his works were simply the first known record of them is a mystery. Linguists have estimated that Shakespeare's vocabulary consisted of between 17,000 and 29,000 words, which is comparable to the average English speaker today. Behind the collaborative authors of the Bible, Shakespeare is currently the most quoted writer in the English language. Number 4. Shakespeare caused a plane crash. In 1890, literary enthusiast Eugene Schieffelin attempted to introduce to America all species of songbird mentioned in Shakespeare's plays, including the starling. Thanks to Schieffelin, within just 50 years, there were a whopping 200 million starlings in America, and they can now be found from Alaska to Florida. Unfortunately, Schieffelin's project was to have tragic consequences. In October 1960, a plane taking off from Boston Airport startled a flock of 10,000 starlings, which choked the engines and caused the plane to crash. 62 people were killed in the disaster. Number 3. Shakespeare's Globe also held bear baiting shows. Shakespeare's Globe Theatre, built by his playing company in 1599, was not just used to stage his plays. It was also used for bear baiting sessions, which saw vicious dogs being forced to attack captive bears for the delight of paying audiences. When he visited the iconic theatre, writer Thomas Platter was shocked to find 120 ferocious dogs and 12 large bears, one of which was blind, being kept backstage. Shakespeare even referenced the cruel spectator sport in his plays, for example in both Julius Caesar and Macbeth. Number 2. He never spelled his name William Shakespeare. Shakespeare very rarely spelled his name the same way twice. Records show more than 80 different spellings, including Willem Shakespeare, Wum Shaxp, and Willem Shaxper. Oddly, there are no records of him ever actually spelling his name William Shakespeare as we know him today. That spelling came from the first folio, which was published 7 years after his death in 1623. Despite the variety of spellings, an authentic Shakespeare signature is currently worth up to $5 million. Number 1. Shakespeare may have been a fraud. In 1785, Oxford scholar James Wilmot suggested that Shakespeare's apparent knowledge of law and history was inconsistent with the upbringing of a glovemaker's son from a small English town. Since then, around 5,000 books have discussed whether Shakespeare was actually a fraud. Numerous figures have been suggested as the true writer of the iconic works, for example Edward de Vere, Earl of Oxford, who had experience in politics and law and had even lived in Italy, where many Shakespearean plays are set. However, there is no definitive evidence to support this theory, particularly as de Vere died in 1604 before plays such as King Lear, Macbeth and The Tempest were supposedly written.
Who'd have thought it? Shakespeare was a junkie, but if you want to know what the 10 most addictive substances on earth are, click the video and find out more, but just make sure you don't take any of them, okay kids? You've been warned, stay in school.